it's Anna again. Thanks so much for coming back. Little Rosie and I are here today to answer a reader question about duck keeping. Today's question was, why are my ducks not laying eggs? And you know, if you have this question, you are not alone. This is actually one of the two most common questions that I get about duck keeping. It's from people who have been keeping ducks for a while, but they have yet to get any eggs from their ducks, and they're trying to figure out why. It's a really common question, and it's one that I hear so often. I've actually developed a 9-step survey that you can go through and answer these questions one at a time. Go through these 9 points like a flow chart to try to help figure out why your ducks might not be laying eggs, and also what to do about it. Once you can figure out why they're not laying eggs, that's when we can troubleshoot and fix it. So let's start at the top. Question number 1. Are you absolutely certain that they're not laying eggs? That's where I always start, is let's just be really sure that they're not laying eggs. Now, if you're keeping your ducks in an enclosed pen and they don't have a lot of places that they can go, you may be very certain that they're not laying eggs. But if your girls are free range and they're wandering around all over 2 acres like ours do, you may possibly just be missing the fact that they're laying eggs somewhere else. And so just to very first start off, I just really make sure that they're not laying eggs and hiding those eggs somewhere else in another nest, in the brush somewhere. And one great way to figure that out is just to leave them in the coop a little bit later in the morning one day. If you can leave them in until 8 or 9, usually ducks lay their eggs pretty early in the day, and if they're laying eggs, they'll probably kind of give up and lay those eggs inside. Otherwise, you can follow the ducks around through the morning and just try to see if they're disappearing anywhere, or send your kids to follow them. Kids love projects like this. Send them on a mission to follow the ducks everywhere that they go all day and see if they can find any nests that might be hidden. That is one thing that sometimes happens, is people are sure that their ducks aren't laying eggs, and then they realize, oh, I went to use the wheelbarrow and there were 37 eggs under the wheelbarrow. They had been laying eggs, they've just been hiding them all this time. So first of all, just start by, give it a day or two and just do whatever you can to make sure that the ducks actually are not laying eggs, because sometimes it's just a matter of them hiding their eggs. Question 2, and you're gonna think I'm crazy, but bear with me. Are you absolutely certain that your ducks are female? I know that sounds totally just like a crazy question. You might be certain, sure, but this is actually something that happens more frequently than you might believe, is that people think that they have female ducks and they're actually not. And usually I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, but sometimes there's a little bit of deception going on. Sometimes when people are getting rid of ducks free, like on Craigslist, they can't get rid of male ducks, and so they advertise them to people who don't know the difference between male and female duck markings, and give away their male ducks that they don't need as females. And this has happened. I actually 2 years ago had this sweet older lady email me. She'd found my blog because I raise Welsh Harlequins, and she had 6 Welsh Harlequin ducks that had been given to her, and the person who gave them to her promised that they were all female. They were wonderful egg-laying ducks. This person was moving and was so happy for them to go to a new home, and she sent me a picture of the ducks, and they all looked like this. Now, if you know about Welsh Harlequins, you see exactly what I do. Every one of those 6 boys was a boy. She did not have any female ducks. This poor sweet thing, she'd been lovingly taking care of these 6 male ducks for months, hoping to get eggs out of them one day. And she's not the only person that I've had reach out to me in a really similar circumstance. It's worth just trying to figure out, are your ducks actually female? And if you're not certain, if you have any doubt at all, a great way to figure out is to join the Facebook group associated with the breed of ducks that you have. And if you don't know what breed of ducks you have, just join a regular duck keeping group on Facebook. There are people who are absolutely passionate about ducks on there, And the best way to do it is take a short video of your ducks so that they can be seen making noise, walking around. People get a chance to see them from every angle, and just get some advice about, I think that these ducks are female. Is anybody seeing anything I'm not? My third question would be, are you certain that your ducks are old enough? Now, Rosie here is only 2 months old. She's a Welsh Harlequin, and she'll start laying eggs when she's about 5 months old, somewhere between 18 and 22 weeks. Muscovy ducks are a little bit older when they start to lay eggs, and so you're going to need to wait until they're about 6 months old or just a little older before expecting to see eggs from a Muscovy duck. All right, question number 4. Are your ducks molting? They do take a good long break each year. If your duck is more than a year old, they've probably been through their first cycle of laying eggs. And if you're starting to see feathers falling out or your ducks are looking a little shaggy, it very well could be that they're in the process of molting and they're taking a couple of months off before starting to lay again in the fall. So that's a good possibility. Also, if you've just purchased adult ducks, a lot of times the stress of moving can be enough to coax a laying full adult hen into molting a little bit early. And so very likely, if you've just purchased adult ducks, it's not at all uncommon for them to start molting a little early and just end their laying cycle early, go ahead and molt, and then before you know it, they'll be laying eggs again. Question number 5, how much daylight are they getting? And I know this can be a little bit of a contentious question. Several years ago, there were quite a lot of blog articles that got published, one right after another, of, how to keep ducks. And it was really, I'm trying to say this nicely. I hope you hear my heart in this. There are some bloggers out there, especially in the South, that wrote some articles about duck keeping when they had not been keeping ducks for very long. And in those articles, it was stated that ducks don't need light through the winter to lay eggs. Now, especially in the southern states where you get a little bit more light than up here in the northern climates, that can be true, especially in a duck's first year. When a duck is hatched and they start laying eggs around 5 months old, it's not uncommon, even up here in Maine where we don't get a lot of light through the winter months, it's not really uncommon for a duck to lay eggs right through the winter as long as they've got a nice tight coop and a place that's out of the snow. It's not uncommon for a duck to lay eggs every day right through their first winter. But that's not going to continue year after year after year of the duck's life. Now, because those articles were published and people believed that, regardless of what climate and what gardening zone they're in, even up in the north where we get fewer hours of daylight through the winter months, and especially since these articles were written without the benefit of the authors having kept ducks for years and years. Again, I think it's really easy to write an article when you've been keeping a creature for a couple of months and feel excited that you know so much about them. But you learn more and more after you've been keeping ducks for years and years, and you realize that actually a duck does need supplemental light. If you're living in the north like I do, and you're getting anything much less than 12 hours of daylight a day, you really do need supplemental light in the winter if you want your ducks who are more than a year old to lay eggs for you all winter. Otherwise, you'll have perfectly healthy ducks that wait until spring when the days are longer and they'll start laying eggs again. If you want ducks all winter long, from ducks that are a year old or more, and you live in a northern climate like I do, you're going to need to consider putting a light in the duck coop. And the way you would do that is just rig up a light on a timer and increase the daylight, not at the end of the day, but at the beginning of the day. Set that light to come on half an hour before dawn, and every week or every several days, increase it by half an hour of daylight. And do that until you've gotten to about 14 hours. And most ducks, you know, even my 5 and 6-year-old ducks, they lay very well all winter long on 14 hours of light. The next question is, do your ducks have a safe place to lay their eggs? If you have just a little lean-to or something like that, if there's a lot going on in your yard and the ducks don't feel like they have somewhere that they can quietly and peacefully lay their eggs, ducks are a little bit more sensitive to stress than chickens are, at least in my experience. Ducks can very quickly become used to something like, you know, if there's a train going by at the same time every day, I wouldn't worry about that. Consistency is something that a duck can get used to. But if your yard is really haphazard and they don't have a peaceful place to lay eggs, it may be that the hens just don't feel like they have a safe place to lay eggs. All right, the next question I have for you is, what are you feeding your ducks and how much are you giving them? One thing that can hold ducks up from producing eggs is inadequate feed or lower quality feed. And so if you've gotten through this checklist and you're still coming up dry for answers, what I would really encourage you to do is get a high quality feed and keep it available to your ducks every day, continually. Let them free feed for a week and see what happens. If you're accustomed to feeding your ducks just a couple of times a day or even once a day, get an extra bag of feed this week, put it in, you know, a deep container where it can just be available to them as much as they want to eat for a full week. Just keep it available at all times, keep the thing full, see how much they go through. And if they've gotten to the end of a week and they're still not laying eggs, that might not be your problem, but generally what I find happens, if people have answered, you know, yes to all of these different questions so far and they get to this question about feed, that usually ends up being the problem, is that they're not getting enough of a high quality feed. And then once they're laying eggs again, you know, you can take a look at how much feed they've gone through in that time and try feeding it to them just a couple of times a day. That evening feeding is more important than the morning feeding because they wake up hungry, and if you have them out on pasture, and again I say this only if they really have adequate pasture and a good sized property to free range, then you can turn them loose to fill themselves with bugs through the first part of the morning, and then in the afternoon give them a really good feeding. And I'd suggest having as much feed as they can possibly eat. Keep it out there for 15 minutes or so, and really let them fill themselves well. You don't want your ducks going hungry because you're not going to get full egg production. Almost done. Next question, how many drakes are in your flock? If you have more than a ratio of about 1 to 5, this may be your problem, especially in the spring months when the boys just are in full gear, just mating with all the girls full speed ahead. If you have too many drakes in your flock, it is a huge stress on the girls, especially if you've got something like a ratio of 1 to 1. If you have almost as many males as you do females, that right there can be enough reason for the ducks to just stop laying, simply from the stress of being overmated. Last question, are there other sources of stress for your ducks? Do you have a neighbor's dogs that keep getting in with the ducks and chasing them around so they don't feel safe? Basically, you know, if you think about the whole purpose of laying eggs, it's all about reproduction, and you want ducks that feel secure enough that they feel that they can lay eggs, hatch them out, raise babies. There's something I think very much integral to a duck that needs peace for the process of wanting to lay eggs. And if they have a constant source of stress, like children that are allowed to chase them can be another one. Dogs chasing them can be another. If there are loud sources of stress, if they get chased frequently, stress can actually prevent your ducks from laying eggs. And so sometimes the trick is simply to provide them with a fenced-in place where they can be safe from the goings-on, or you know, setting up some boundaries, whether it's with your children or neighbor children, with the neighbor's dogs. All right, I know this has been kind of a long video in response to one little question of why are my ducks not laying eggs? I hope you found it helpful just going down through those 9 questions that you can ask yourself. It can really help to sleuth out the reason for why you might not be getting eggs from your ducks. I also have a whole post about this with the checklist, and in case you'd like to be able to reference that and read it, I'm going to put it in the links below. I hope you found this helpful, and if you have any questions about keeping ducks, you can send those anytime. It's asktheducklady@saltandmycoffee.com, or put them right in the comments below, and I'll try to do what I can to help answer those questions. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you tomorrow.